Me, 23 female, with my 24 male, together 7 years. I messed up big time, and I want him back. Jason and I went through high school and college together. We were each other's primary priority in everything. I've always adored him, and I'm sure he does as well. Our families are acquainted, and both sets have welcomed each other as members of the family. We've spent several holidays together at each other's parents' homes. Life was all set, and I knew he was going to ask me to marry him this summer, and I knew he already had a ring. He doesn't know, incidentally. But I blew it last spring. I obtained it at work, which messed up our schedule and caused us to see each other much less. This gave me more time to myself and caused me to have concerns about how my life was going about us. So around Memorial Day, I thought it was time to take a vacation. Maybe it was time to explore what it was like to be single and have no obligations. We chatted, and he was visibly disturbed. In fact, he was very well broken since, although I had been thinking about it for a time, it came to him completely unexpectedly. He asked if there was anybody else, and I told him no, that this wasn't about finding another person, but about having an opportunity to be free. He asked if there was any possibility of us getting back together, and I assured him that absolutely. I really felt we would be together in the end, but I just needed some time alone. I said that I wanted to take a break. This managed to calm him down a little, but he was still agitated. Honestly, as much as it wounded him, I felt terrible and nearly pulled out, but I knew I'd be miserable if I did. I held him till he calmed down, and we decided to contact one another again in a month. I also informed him that if an emergency arose during the month, he could definitely call me, but I really needed the time to consider things through. He concurred. The first week was far more difficult than I anticipated. Every day I had to battle the impulse to text or phone him. However, by week 3, things had improved and I felt like I was making actual growth as a person. I phoned him 1 month later as planned, and we met for lunch on a Saturday. This time he was quite different, very aloof, and essentially simply let me ramble, only responding to my direct inquiries. To be honest, I wasn't sure what to make of it. I wasn't sure whether he was furious at me, if he was simply protecting himself, or what. I told him I missed him, but was beginning to feel comfortable on my own. Despite the fact that he didn't say anything to me, I could see the expression on his face. I said that I thought I'd want to have the summer to myself. He just answered, "Well, contact me if you ever change your mind," and then stood up and walked away. There was no parting hug or kiss. This bothered me when I knew he was in pain again. This time, though, I chose to stay in touch with him by text and phone conversations, so he knew I wasn't leaving him. A coworker invited me to a party at her home in early August. I ran into a friend of hers there, and we spent the day chatting and hanging out. It felt strange, since I had never spent so much time with another man before, but he was really pleasant and attractive, so although I felt horrible, I didn't feel it bad. At the conclusion of the day, he invited me to join him on a cycling ride the next week. I did, and I had a great time. He then invited me to supper, and to be honest, we had just recently begun dating. I wasn't cheating because I was single, but I thought it would be unjust not to inform Jason, since I knew from talking to his sister that he wasn't seeing anybody and was just moping around the home. I texted him to let him know that I had begun seeing someone else, and that I was sorry for what had transpired. He merely wrote, "Okay, bye," in response. For the first time, I had with the new man around the end of August. It was dreadful. I experienced a panic attack as soon as it was finished, which was mercifully brief. I felt I'd made a mistake and began to feel terrible about everything. I went home and wept myself to sleep, only to wake up the following day and try to contact Jason, only to discover that he had me blocked on everything. I had previously spoken with his sister, so I phoned her to see if she might have him contact me. She was hostile to me and told me that I had shattered her brother's heart and that I should leave him alone. This happened in September, and I've been attempting to reach him ever since. I never saw that other person again, and I realized that although I appreciated my independence, it was nothing compared to having Jason in my life. I eventually spoke with one of his pals last week, and he told me that Jason is still alone and miserable. So here's my query. Do I simply go to his house? Some people will advise me that I should avoid him since he has blocked me. But I honestly believe this was a mistake I made that harmed both of us, and I believe I can correct it if he would just speak to me. I can tell him how big of a mistake everything was and spend the rest of my life making it up to him. Story 2. Male 27, trying to cope after being left by a cheater. My ex-girlfriend, a 21-year-old female, and I had been dating for a few years when this happened. I'd known her since we first began working together, and she has always had her fair share of difficulties. It was a little amount of drama and stupidity, which is something I try to be as patient as possible, even when I fail. However, she cheated on me for the first time just a few months into our relationship, which she unquestionably still says was adultery, and she hasn't stopped since, which she probably still maintains was infidelity. I had had an eye injury at work and had become very photosensitive as a result of it. My eyes were bothering me so much that I spent a few days resting in a totally dark room without even playing games or looking at computer screens. She was aware of my condition and saw my failure to respond to her message for a few days as a blatant attempt to avoid responding to her. So she decided to a lot of people in a short period of time, like 4 days. I assumed she hadn't gotten to know me all that well just yet. It bothered me because, despite the fact that we worked together, she didn't even bother to wait till we were back together to find out what had happened before spreading her legs in front of me. This established the tone for the remainder of our collaboration. We were able to remove her from a situation in which her father and stepmother were abusing her and taking money from her. We attempted to get back on our feet. I obtained a job in the city for a large pay and commuted every day, sacrificing my health in order to offer a better life for my family. She made up for it by sleeping with the person next to her at the shelter where she was staying and infecting me with a transmitted disease, STD. At that moment, I became depressed and finally lost my job in the city for reasons that were unconnected to the situation. Several months later, we have another disagreement, and she begins sleeping with a new neighbor. He allegedly smoked her out and then forced himself on her, according to her. I'm still undecided about whether or not to purchase it. After that, I was never able to shake the feeling that she was to blame. It took almost 7 months for me to remove her from the punished category, and our relationship began to deteriorate gradually after that. Due to my inability to maintain the emotional stability, trust, and confidence necessary to fulfill my responsibilities and be a decent partner, I sank further into melancholy and eventually gave up attempting to connect with her. As a result of all of my yelling and blaming her for everything that was wrong, as well as my lack of concern for her, I was bursting at the seams with frustration because I felt like I'd been chained to someone who would abuse me and cheat on me no matter how cautiously I treated them. She never attempted to solve anything since bringing it up would irritate me and cause her to shut down. She ultimately gave up and fled because she couldn't bear the weight of the world anymore. I can't say that I blame her for it. A major portion of my being is liberated of this burden. However, as a result of this experience, I no longer believe I can put my faith in anybody, particularly females. After all of that, I've been having problems with females, which has been exacerbated by the fact that I'm completely isolated from my peers and have no friends as a result of people I was connected with leaving the state and no longer communicating with me or having a falling out with me. I had reached a point with her where I couldn't put my faith in her in any situation. She had systematically undermined my trust to the point that I couldn't bring myself to believe anything she said. She went from being my favorite person on the planet to being an adversary I couldn't put my faith in over a period of time. I'm at a loss as to how to go from this point forward. However, given the present state of the globe, I'm having difficulty finding a genuine therapist to consult with. To yet, I have not been able to locate a qualified professional who takes my insurance and is actively seeking new customers. I don't have any friends with whom I can talk about it, and I can only stand talking about it with my parents for so long until I become sick of it. Any and all suggestions are gratefully received and considered. Everything is overwhelming, and I'm just trying to figure out how to digest and feel about it all.